2 or 3 hotels in the area where we unfortunately had that other fatality reported at. But then you have buildings that are still there. The neighboring building, the banks next door might still be there. So it's one of those spotty situations, but we've lost hotels. We've lost, some hotels are actually permanent residents. So those are there were people that lived in there year round, more of a motel kind of situation. And then we're also looking at the homes behind there that were lost. You've got other businesses. This is going to take a while to recover. A church, I was at the First Baptist Church yesterday. They lost their youth center. I'll find a picture and it's shared out there on Twitter, but you could see the chairs in the youth center were in the circle, the semicircle from where they were sitting on Sunday. And the chairs were still sitting there. The building's gone, but the chairs are there in that same order. So it was kind of a surreal experience that Sunday night we all went to bed and we were thinking everything's going to be okay. We were happy for Thanksgiving to be over and get back to our normal lives and things. And here we are dealing with this situation. Back to some of the other damage stuff, if you will. Parkway, main drag of Parkway. I won't tell you every business is 100% fine, but if you go down the Parkway, which is the main corridor in Gatlinburg, most of those businesses are fine. You might find some spotty damage, but definitely the buildings are not totally destroyed. And I do understand the elementary school did get a minimal damage, and there may be some loss of a couple of buildings over at the Aramont, but much of that campus was spared, which is that's great news. We know the city worked tirelessly to try to save that property when it was up for sale so that they could purchase that and keep that school downtown, because they felt like that was such an important piece of the history and the culture of Gatlinburg to have an arts and crafts school right in the middle of town and let those folks learn their craft, experience their craft, and then go right downtown and sell it. And then all of those tourists come through and they have some memory that they have purchased the pottery, the woven stuff made right there at Aramont. So that's all. I'm sure they'll do what they can do to get their school back up and running as well.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that picture that Kyle's talking about with the church, you've had some very powerful pictures that you've posted on your Facebook page. So if you haven't seen that, that's where you can find it. The fires, like you were saying, are they're almost linear. The fires that we have here in the Smokies, and not only was there no warning, but they can hit you and not your neighbor, or the other way around just as easily.
And I think that had a lot to do. We were out in it on Monday night when the storm started to erupt. The winds were not just straight line coming in one direction. The winds were just whipping all around. So you could imagine the embers flying here, there, everywhere. And the car next door is perfectly fine. The building's door is perfectly fine. But then one section over, you're talking about, the restaurant that's no longer standing. So I believe that's the situation of what happened when we get those winds swirling in all different directions. It threw the fire in many different spots.
And yesterday, firefighters were telling us, it's going to be sort of what comes first. If the winds come first, then we're going to have some trouble if the winds come before the rain. But if it's the other way around, then that's good news. Unfortunately, the winds did come before the rains yesterday, and you talked to some firefighters who explained what they were seeing this morning.
Yeah. Coming into it this morning, I was optimistic, thinking we saw a little bit of rain last night. This is all going to be a good thing. Got here this morning. I had mentioned I saw firefighters sleeping in their fire trucks. They were exhausted. They were getting back at about 4:30 after being out all night long. And I went up to one of them and asked him how his night was, and he just said it wasn't good, and that he felt like things had gotten worse last night. And the way he explained it is it looked like a bomb went off in Gatlinburg. And I couldn't understand why, and he explained, which Kyle had been talking about, it's those winds that came into play again last night, and we had heard that winds can take an ember and throw it a mile away, and so that's how those wildfires can spread so quickly when we see winds like that. And so the winds came first, not the other way around. We had a little bit of rain last night, and like Brittany, you were mentioning, that rain has to get far enough underneath the ground to actually put that fire out, and we didn't see that last night. But the blessing in all of this is we saw those dark clouds come overhead early this morning as we got into the morning, and those clouds brought rain, and we saw a lot more rain. It's actually raining outside right now. There's been kind of a steady fall. It's lightened up just a little bit, but goodness, this is such a blessing to see rain here today, and no, that's not going to be the answer to completely fixing everything. this is a start. It's a step in the right direction, and this is really what's going to hopefully get the fire out so that the firefighters and the first responders can really focus on checking out each building and making sure that everyone is accounted for and everyone is safe.
Yeah, and like you were saying, that the rain and the water, in order to put out the hot spots, really needs to penetrate deeply enough to be able to get into the root of where those flames could be. So there hasn't been much of a relief for firefighters. They're still out here just as they were throughout the whole week. I'm going to tell you some stories about some firefighters that I learned yesterday. We've had firefighters come in from all across the state. We know that. I talked to one yesterday who is a volunteer firefighter, but his day job, his 9 to 5, if you will, is in law enforcement. He's taking paid time off to be here fighting fires across the state. Very powerful there. And then you have to keep in mind too, a lot of these first responders who are from here don't know or didn't know until recently what they lost or what they had. So they didn't know what they were going home to, which is pretty powerful.
And they had mentioned in the press conference that some firefighters, their homes even burned down, and they were still here working to save other people's homes, working to save our mountains. And it's just, we have such brave men and women who are working to save Gatlinburg and Sevier County and to save these homes. And I feel so honored to be a part of this community. It's truly amazing.
Yeah, it really is incredible.